is the Wandering Mike.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wandering Mike. Today I'm here with Anastasia. Hey, Anastasia, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's a good sunny day here today um, in Queenstown, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Think it's going to be a very interesting one. I'm excited.
Me too.
So, to get us started, so if you just want to introduce yourself to the people, tell us a little bit about yourself, your life, your journey, anything you want to share.
Okay, perfect. Well, my name is Anastasia Lindsey, and I am an award winning author and self taught poet. I am also a very creative person. So I love singing. I love to write, obviously, dancing. I love photography. I even auditioned for The Voice in 2017.
Oh,
So
really?
just yeah, thank you. Just very creative. If I can be creative in any type of way, even I love enjoy doing art, creating art. That's really me in a nutshell. I'm all things romance. So I love romance books and romance movies. Um, I love going to see movies and spending time with my family. So I'm just, an ordinary girl just doing really big things out there in the world.
Nice. Yeah, that's super cool. And there's a bunch of things that I want to ask you about, but I always feel like it's nice to start kind of in beginning, so to speak. So, um, taking us back to your basically starting all these creative endeavors, your writing, um, also the singing and the dancing that you mentioned. Um, where did the motivation come from? What inspired you to like put the energy into these creative aspects?
I feel like I always knew that I would, be interested in some type of healing form where whether it was painting or drawing or writing, I just naturally gravitated toward those things as a child. And even now into my adulthood, it's just something that's always brought me peace at the end of the day. So, we naturally gravitate towards things that make us happy and bring us joy and bring us peace. Being creative always brings me peace. So no matter how chaotic my world is, I know that I have things that I could lean back on, like my writing. My writing has always been very therapeutic for me. Even painting, just it doesn't have to be fancy. I'm not going to hang it up in a art gallery, but just the fact that I could paint and feel like I'm releasing like the rough day or rough week that I had. So I would say it always goes back to just being very meditative and mindful with who I am as a person and remembering to follow my peaceful moments and to bring joy back to myself.
Right. So, um, I'm also someone that is pretty interested in writing. So it's something that I did on and off, um, never to actually release anything, but it was just something.
No.
I love languages, and it's just something. It's an art form that I kind of like to play around with a little bit. Um, so that medium in particular, writing, and you said poetry, and you also emphasize self-taught poetry. So,
Yeah.
what is it that specifically that medium that that you found exciting in, and how was your own journey towards that poetry and writing?
Yeah, so it actually started in grade school. So in English class, one of our assignments was to write a poem. And so I wrote a poem, I turned it in. I can't really tell you what it was about because I don't remember that part. But my teacher pulled me to the side the following day, and automatically I started thinking, "Oh my goodness, she didn't like my poem, or I did something wrong." I just start thinking all of the bad thoughts. But really, what I got was the opposite. She told me how beautiful my poem was, and she really encouraged me to continue writing poetry because she felt like I was a natural born poet. So that was huge for me being a child and just trying to figure out, what do I want to do with myself, or, who do I want to be? And I was like, maybe I'm just going to be a poet. Like, I have my teacher telling me that I'm really good at this, that it comes naturally. So I haven't put down the pen since, and now I'm in my 30s, and that was in grade school. So it's really stuck with me. And so, like, I always give a shout out to her, but I also give a shout out to teachers because they have really impactful, like, they're the most impactful people in a child's life. Like, you have your family, but teachers really, they see you in a different light. So shout out to all the teachers out there. But really, that's just been my journey. And I wanted to go to college for like creative writing, but I kind of had like outside influences get in my mind. They're like, "Well, how are you gonna make money, or what kind of career are you gonna have with poetry and writing? Do you really think that that's something you could do for the rest of your life?" And so I let those words get in my head. So I majored in something completely different, computer science, but
Right.
totally not fulfilling. And so now I tell people that I just continued to write, and I taught myself poetry, all the different forms of poetry. It was almost like I didn't go to college for it, but I taught myself it anyways. And that's kinda, like, kinda winded. I'm sorry, but I just had to, like, tie all that together.
No, that's perfectly fine. And yeah, like you said, it painted the picture perfectly for us. So yeah, I like long-winded answers.
Okay.
Um, so the thing you mentioned though, is actually um interesting as well because um you mentioned teachers, you mentioned people around us, and the big part that all these people do play in bringing us up and raising us as well. Um, and the thing about you wanting to study writing and then going into computer science, now at the point that you are in your life, um, how do you kind of interpret that for yourself? Because I feel like it is an important and difficult conversation because there's also no one size fits all. And it is kind of that discussion about safety, but then also following your passion. How how would you see that for yourself now at the point that you're at?
Yeah, I wish I would have leaned more into what I was thinking and feeling for myself, because I always tell people your body is never going to lead you wrong. Like, you know what's right for you and what's not right for you. It's when we let the outside influences get in the way. It's like, here I am and here's where I want to be. All of the in between is getting in the way, and I'm letting it. And so I wish I would have been strong enough to say, yeah, those are valid thoughts, but this is what I want to do. Or, yeah, you have a good point, but I'm going to try it anyways. Because I wish that maybe there would have been a part of me that said, oh, I have my master's in creative writing, or, I just feel like that would have been very fulfilling for me. But I know that sometimes things just don't go as planned. And so I'm accepting to my journey because I still have published books. I'm still writing poetry. So I didn't have to go to school for it. It's just something that I really wanted to do. But I feel like it's a good testimony too that you can do whatever you want with your dreams. There's no like straight path, you know? It's like a GPS. You might take a wrong turn, but you're eventually going to find your way back to where you're supposed to be.
Yes, I like that analogy as well. sometimes, yeah, some of our ways are just longer. We're taking some detours.
Yeah.
But yeah, finally, we all kind of find onto our own path eventually, whenever that is, because everyone's journey is different.
Yes. So very true.
So, um, you you also mentioned, um, yeah, just creative things in general. Are these other things, the painting, the photography, the singing, the dancing, are these things that you feel like you also want to pursue in a more like career kind of way, or is it all just it's all just passions that you just want to have in your life?
I would say they're all just passions. I think there was a part of me that thought maybe I could be a singer. And while I do love to sing and sometimes I do land singing gigs, it's not something that I would want to do like, as my career. Like, oh, I am a singer. I don't ever see myself saying that, but I do enjoy singing. And getting hired to sing at weddings and stuff, that brings me joy and peace, but it's not something that I would see myself doing forever. Photography is just an outlet for me. Because I'm a poet, I'm already viewing the world with different eyes. So then I just take pictures of those things that I'm viewing. And so it's just another outlet for me to be creative with my poetry. Sometimes I'll take pictures and then write poetry about the pictures that I took. So I guess that I would say that they're just passions that kind of help fuel my poetry, that bring me joy or peace so that I can write more poetry, but definitely not things that I would see myself doing as a career.
Right. Um, well, I will, because I have a very interesting question about poetry, and I will park that to the side for now, because feel like we can talk about that more. Um, I just very selfishly need to ask about, because actually one of when I still used to watch TV regularly, I haven't like watched a lot of shows in a long time now, actually. But
Yeah,
one of the shows I really enjoyed tuning in for every week was The Voice, actually, because I always felt like it's such a great show where um the singing actually was like the main thing that people focused on. That's why I love the show. So yeah,
I
just
agree.
selfishly, I really want to ask about your experience with that. How
Yeah.
how was that auditioning for that?
So it was different. So I didn't actually make it on TV. I didn't make it that far, but it was a long line of people waiting to audition. You had to sign up and everything. And when I get in there, I'm in a room with two judges and there's like 10 other singers, auditioners in the room with me, and we're all sitting in the chairs and we just get called up one by one. And so we have like 30 seconds or 45 seconds to sing a song.
Mm.
And then we sit back down and the next person goes up. And so, although I didn't make it through, I feel very confident with my voice because out of the 10 people that I was in the room with, none of them advanced and some of them had amazing voices. So, it's either they were looking for a specific voice or maybe a specific personality, but it was so fun because I got to hear all of these other voices too that were beautiful. They were amazing and they didn't make it either, so I didn't feel like it was my lack of ability to sing. It was just there you have to think there's so many people and I'm sure they hear
Yeah.
so many beautiful voices, but they're just looking for something specific.
Yeah, that
Eh,
that's a nice insight to it because yeah, that's exactly my thought. Like there must be so many people, especially in the States where it's just huge. Like,
Yeah.
it's a huge country, 50 different states. So it's like, obviously there's like a plethora of people to choose
Yes.
from. So, um, yeah, it probably needs to be that very specific thing that they're looking for at that
Yeah.
moment in time.
Yes, it's so true. But it was overall a very fun experience, and I can at least say I auditioned for the voice.
That definitely, yeah, that no one can take it away from you, and
Yeah.
it's great that you enjoyed that. That's the most important part here is
Yeah.
enjoying it. Um, s- so yeah, you were saying that these other passions that you do, they um help you enhance, help to play towards your poetry. So um one thing you said that resonated with me was through your poetry, you see the world in a different way. And um, obviously, that is something that a poet kind of that's the hen or the egg question, kind of. Is that something that that you had, or is that also to some extent something that evolves with honing the craft, learning to like look at things in that specific way, in that way that you can portray it to make people feel the same thing you do. So, um, do these things kind of play off of each other, writing poetry and just the mindset of how you observe the world around
Yeah, I would say that it's something that's evolved over time because for me, I obviously didn't grow up, you know, being a poet. It was something that was introduced to me in middle school and grade school. So once I found out that I'm a poet, then I really did start to see the world differently because I wanted to write poems about everything: birthdays, celebrations, just life. I was looking for reasons to write poetry. And then it wasn't
you?
until like high school when I started to like go through, all of the things that teenagers go through. And so for me, I started to use it as an outlet, and so I'm taking my pain and the angsty teenager years, and I'm turning them into poetry. So then that was the moment that it clicked for me, like, okay, like I can take my pain and make it beautiful. And so in my eyes, like I see the pain that I'm going through, I see the trauma that's happening, but then I can turn it into something beautiful, or I can turn it into a story that helps people, turn it into a story that helps myself process and heal what I'm going through. So I would say that as I've gotten older, I've just evolved to see life differently because it helps me craft my poems.
Yeah. Um, so trying to see it from the other side as well. What and you probably read some poems yourself as well at some point and consume poetry as well. So for the consumer, wh- what do you feel like is the most important thing or the most beautiful thing about a poem to the reader? So not looking from point of the artist, but from someone who is consuming.
I would say if they can see themselves in the poem. So a lot of times, what I'll do is when I write a poem, I will think about the reader, and I'll try to think about things that they might be going through. Because me and you could go through a similar situation, let's say a heartbreak, but me and you might experience two different feelings. So I may be feeling deep sadness, you may be feeling anger. And so those are two different feelings. And so I try to approach poems embracing everyone's story so that people can see themselves in the poem. and find it relatable. I'm not just talking about my story, I'm talking about yours and I'm talking about the next person. So for me, writing poetry isn't just about me, it is about the reader. I want them to be able to relate to, maybe it's just a line in a poem, maybe it's the whole poem in its entirety. But I do think about other people. I have other people in my mind when I'm writing a poem because it's for all of us. Poetry is healing. And even if people aren't into poetry, it's always there. It's always a resource that people can lean on. And so it's my job as a poet to make sure that my poetry is a resource for people to see themselves and know that they're not alone.
Yes, that that definitely is what I love about poems as well, if you can. And with most poems, it happens that you read something and you just feel that's what humans kind of tend to do anyway. Try to find a way to relate it to ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, so we basically finding ourselves and our stories in that. And um, that's also the beautiful thing about poetry is that let's say you publish a book full of poems, like everyone has their own favorite poem. I doubt that the majority of people would agree poem number 8 is my favorite. No,
Yeah.
because everyone has different poems where they can really feel into one thing, where they're like, this just really deeply resonated with me. And
Yeah.
that's yeah, why I love to just have an abundance of poems as well. And I always enjoy like and see people being encouraged to just put something out there because um yeah, everyone has basically their own voice, and everyone has something that only they can put out there. And then if they put it out there, other people can relate to it or not. That's fine too. Then you read
Yeah.
another poem, and then you can relate to that. So I feel like, um, yeah, it's just there's there's never too much poems that can be out there.
Very true. And my poems might not be for some people. Even if I try to be relatable to everybody, I don't know everybody's story and I can't even attempt to, but I can try my best to be as relatable as possible. But it's also okay to know that my poems just might not be for everybody. And if someone doesn't like my poetry, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just doesn't mean it's relatable to them and their story and their life experiences.
So, um, especially because you kind of found your own journey in into poetry. Um, because I just said and thought about everyone having their own voice and everyone basically being able to put things out into the world. If writing and poetry is something that person just kind of has a spark towards, they're like, oh, maybe it's something for me. Um, wh- how would you go about getting started in that journey? Kind of seeing what I can create. Yeah, how would you get started into poetry?
I would tell people to just maybe go check out a library, find some poetry books, and some of them you may not like. But if you find a poem or poetry book that you don't like, don't let that stop you from continuing to read poetry. I think people, they find poetry and it's really hard to read. And so they think all of the poetry is like that. I encourage people to have fun with it. There's going to be poems that you don't understand, and that's okay. There's going to be books that just weren't your favorite, and that's okay. But I encourage you to keep trying to find ones that you do enjoy. Or maybe there's only certain poems, like maybe there's a 100-page book, but you only like one poem. Well, that's a good sign. Let's try to find more poems that are similar to that one. And if you're interested in writing, I always say just start with what's happening around you. Just write about what's happening around you. Don't think about grammar or if you're doing it correctly, just do the act of writing. And then you can go back and fine tune it. Study poetry, look at other poems online and see, oh, I kind of like that style. I'm going to try to incorporate that style with what I just wrote and see what happens. So I always tell people there's no right or wrong way. Just dive into poetry. Like that's all I could ask for as a poet is just have an open mind to poetry. And if you want to write it, let's practice. Read, you have to, they always say if you want to be a writer, you have to be a reader. It's the same thing. If you want to be
Mm,
a poet, you have to read poetry. And I promise it will just unfold naturally for you too.
mm, right. Um, like I said, I'm just generally curious about the topic as well. So, um, for you right now, that has done it for a while, that is advanced. What are kind of the things that you are looking into for yourself? Are there any challenges or things that you still improve on, that you strive to learn more about? Where are you at the moment in your journey?
I think for me, I could definitely learn more with the publishing process. So I've got two published books. One of them I did with a publisher, and then the second one I did self publishing. And there's just so much to the publishing world that,
Mm,
I know now, but there's still so much more out there that I have to learn. And that it's always, the act of writing the book is hard, but then the act of publishing it is harder. And then marketing it is the hardest. You have to talk about
right.
yourself and market yourself. And it's like, how do I do that? So I would say, publishing and marketing myself and my book and my art is something that I'm still working through. I want to get my poetry out there. I want my books to be in hands all over the world. But the hard part is just making that happen and trusting the publishing process and knowing that your book is complete and beautiful and final just as it is. So I would say that's where I'm at right now. But with my writing, I'll always be learning different techniques and styles and just ways to process and write my poetry.
Um, would you, in your opinion, um, say that obviously the publishing world and also the marketing and all that goes into that, I mean, has drastically changed to maybe 10, 20 years ago. Like we have all these online platforms. We just, because of that, also have a very big amount of things that are offered. Right away you would go into your local store, and that's basically where you got it. Now you have the internet and you have these various platforms. Um, from as an artist and an author, um, do you feel like this has made it easier or harder for you to publish your books?
I would say it's made it easier. I feel like anybody could write a book and publish it now thanks to self-publishing, which is good because if we were stuck in the traditional publishing world, a lot of great writers would not have their books published. Um, it's really selective. It's almost like The Voice. They're looking for something particular. In the traditional publishing world, they're looking for particular books. You might have a bestseller in your hand, but if no traditional publisher picks it up, you'll never get your book out there. So I feel like that is a beautiful part to self-publishing is like if you have belief in your book, you could publish it as soon as tomorrow if you put in the hard work. So I love that aspect, and more people are choosing self publishing now and getting their books out there and believing in their books. So I will always be thankful for that because there's a lot of us out there that, deserve our books to be out there in the world. And we shouldn't have a publisher decide if it's good or not to be published. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah. Um, and I definitely agree on that point. Like I said, the more things that can be out there, the better it is for everyone. And especially if we're just talking about um, what I think I heard while you were telling your story as well, like these things on some level being a healing mechanism as well. And if
Yeah.
that possibility of just publishing your book by yourself, that just encourages more people to just go into that and put themselves on paper and start that healing journey for themselves, then that as well is a great thing.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
Um, so speaking on that, on the topic of using it as a healing mechanism as well, one one thing that kind of one word rather that is also deeply linked to poetry, depending obviously on what you do write about, but is vulnerability. So it's
Mhm.
basically being vulnerable, being transparent. So, um, was that at all difficult for you? Was that something you were prone to? How is your relationship to vulnerability in your life and then also in your art?
I would say that I'm on the journey of vulnerability. So a lot of my poems, I'm very deeply vulnerable, and I'm trying to show people that it's safe to do so, even if other people make you feel like it's not safe. I want people to know that there's power in sharing your stories and being truthful and authentic in the things that happen to you, because that's how we truly connect with one another. If I just show you the pieces of me that are all pretty and rainbows and sparkles, then I'm not being true. I'm only showing you a percentage of me. But if I can show you everything, I can show you the sparkles and the rainy days, then you get the full picture of who I am. You see who Anastasia is. And then we can start to connect with one another on deeper levels. And so I knew that I wanted to do that with my poetry. If I can show people these are things that I'm going through, and they know that they're not alone, then we can connect. Then people start to feel like, okay, I'm not alone in the world. So by me being vulnerable, I show people that they're safe, that they're not alone, and that we all go through things and we're going to get through them together by being truthful and honest with our stories.
Yes. Do you feel like that's something because that is an interesting topic and thinking about the people that can relate to it, but also taking myself into that as well. Having to learn that you, in the majority of times, can actually trust the people around you rather than hiding things from them and
Yeah.
um, really being, because I feel like it's partly also having to do with confidence. So actually having the confidence to talk about things, saying, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'm not just going to, "Yeah, fine," but
Yeah.
no, actually today, this and this happened. I feel a little bit uneasy because of this and that. Um, yeah, what was that? how did you get comfortable? And you said you are in this journey in your art at the moment, but
Mhm.
how did you get comfortable in just yeah being more of yourself as well?
I would say it took practice. You just have to, and I always tell people the goal is not to stop being scared because it's okay to be scared. It's one of the human, feelings, experiences that we all go through. The goal is to be scared and do it anyways. It's okay to be scared as long as you don't get stuck in that state of mind. It's okay to be scared or have fear over something, but don't let that fear keep you small. Don't let your fear keep you from not chasing your dreams or being vulnerable with people. You may be scared, but do it anyways. And so that's kind of what I told myself. Yes, being vulnerable is very scary. It even feels a little uncomfortable right now, but we're going to do it anyways. And so, with practice and doing that enough times, you start to become more comfortable with it. And so, that's kind of what I tell people, just practice. Doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be every day. You could say, I'm going to choose one vulnerable thing once a week, just one time a week. And then you can work up to 2 times a week. And just being patient with the process and being patient with yourself and knowing that you are on your own time limit. You can control how fast or slow you want to go on your own journey. And I think that helps people take the pressure away from having to be perfect at it.
Yes. Um, I feel like that's something that you can also um and should relate to almost everything in your life is just realizing, and we have touched on this a couple of times in this conversation, that everyone's journey um is unique. And I think that the quickest path to being unhappy is comparison, is
Yes.
comparing yourself and your journey with other people, because those people's journey isn't your journey, so you don't even have to worry about it. And
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, even if you take one step per month, you're still taking a step.
Yes.
So all all
Exactly.
that all that still counts.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
um so right now, where you are with your art, we talked a little bit already about um publishing, the marketing things. um So generally in your art, but also in your life, what do you currently strive towards? What do you put your energies in? Um, well, yeah, kind of what are your goals and maybe dreams, if you want to call it that, for the future?
Yeah, I would say I would love to just be at peace, more at peace with myself. If I notice that if I give myself these big goals to try to accomplish, I will, one, easily get burnt out, or two, feel a whole bunch of pressure to make sure that it happens. So I always just say, let's just continue building on our peace. And if we're writing books or if we're doing singing or if we're doing art, as long as we're just centering ourselves back to peace, then it doesn't matter what my future looks like or what I'm doing. I'm okay with my future changing. Maybe I'm writing books right now, and then maybe I create a movie in 10 years. I'm open to many possibilities. And I only say that because I have always put a lot of pressure on myself. So now we're just going for ease. We're going for simplicity. We're going for peace, no matter what it is that we're doing throughout our lives. I would love to just write books forever, but if I place that limitation on myself, I may be closing doors to things that I'm supposed to be doing 10 years from now. So I would say just being open to wherever life takes me, and being okay with pivoting and going with the flow and the ebbs and flows of life.
Um, yeah, that's an interesting topic as well. That I had with various people already is kind of this notion of being ambitious, trying to be as productive as possible. And again,
Like,
um, what does that even mean? Who are we comparing ourselves against? So, um, that sounds like you do have sort of a journey there for yourself, and like you have a personal relationship with that that topic of ambition, productivity, and how did you, or maybe still are, finding that balance and going towards the where you're more focused on being at peace and just being content and happy rather than maybe stressing a little bit more. So how was that journey of finding balance?
I would say it takes a certain level of understanding that, hey, sometimes things just aren't going to go the way that we want them to. If we place this big commotion around being perfect or this is how my life is going to go, then that's when we get disappointed. So for me, I always have to remind myself that, hey, this is what I want right now, but it may not look like that. So just be prepared for, life to throw you something else. And if you can talk yourself through that, then you won't have such big disappointment or you won't feel disappointed in yourself. So for me, it takes like strong mental strength, I would say, to rewrite those thoughts that you have. So if you're somebody that puts a lot of pressure on yourself, start to tell yourself, hey, I know that this is what I want right now, but life might have other plans. So we're going to be prepared for that. But for now, we're going to try to do our best to make sure our dreams come true. But if different goals come through, then we're going to learn to pivot and go with the flow. And so I would say for me, that's the biggest takeaway is just being open to change because change is going to happen regardless if we're ready or not. And I've learned from firsthand experience that it's when I'm most comfortable, that's when change is going to come. So you may be stuck in a comfort zone and life is going to come in and be like, all right, we're going to spin your world around really fast. Be prepared. Hold on.
Yeah. um I feel like that's a great way to go through life in general. um
Yeah.
I it's it's a very it's a topic I actually love to discuss, because for me, and I don't know at all how you relate to this, but for me, what helps me kind of go into a similar direction than the one you described is my spiritual belief. So I
Mm,
basically believe that everything happens for a reason. So
yeah.
I have a strong faith and belief in what I call the universe. People have a lot of different names for it. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of what always helps me to um, be grounded in a certain way and just be yeah, like you said, going with the flow, going with whatever life or the universe um throws at you. So I'm just curious, is that present in your life at all? Is there a little bit of a spiritual component, or is it just the very factual thing as well, just life throws
I
something at
guess-
you?
Yeah, I would say I'm very spiritual in that way too, because I always say if it's meant to be, it will be. which helps take the pressure away from things. Like, if you want to be a best selling author and you work and you work and you work and you just feel like you're getting nowhere, if you go with it, if you lead with the thought, like, hey, if I'm meant to be a best selling author, I will be, then you know, like, okay, I don't have to put so much pressure on myself because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen regardless. You still have to put in the work. You still have to do things that get you there. But if it's supposed to happen, it will happen. Everything happens for a reason. The people we meet, I don't believe is just a coincidence. I think that the people we meet is for a reason. Like, there's a reason for everything. We may not ever understand that reason, but sometimes we do figure out the reason. But I think the most important thing is to know that we're exactly where we're supposed to be. And when that time comes where we're supposed to move on to something bigger, greater, better, then we will be. Life will show us that it's time.
Right. Um, just because the topic just came up, is that sort of spiritual belief, is that at all part of your poetry as well, or is that something that you don't really combine?
I combined it a little bit. I'm mindful of it because I know that, like you said, there's people that call the universe different things. There's different names, there's different perceptions. And so I never want to like push my beliefs onto somebody else. So I'll put it in there just enough to introduce it or to let people know, like, hey, this is what I believe in. But I never talk about it to the point where someone says, okay, I can't read this book because I don't believe in this. I do it just enough to be authentic and real to me and my story,
Mm.
but mindful enough that anybody could pick up my book and find relatable pieces in it. So I would say I'm about 50-50 there.
Um, well, yeah, actually, I thought of asking that question, but and then you said you basically write about everything, but I
Mhm.
was kind of interested in the sort of topics that you cover in your books and your poetry. Um, yeah, it does sound like it's quite a range of topics then, right?
Yeah, I do. I talk about all of the human emotions. So my job as a poet is to normalize human emotion. So I talk about it all. I talk about anger, frustration, sadness, but I talk about love and peace and kindness. And I kind of just do this full embodiment with my poetry that whatever you're experiencing, whatever emotions you are going through, they're normal. I sometimes think we tend to push the other ones to the side. Like, if I'm feeling angry, I usually don't want to tell people that, or if I'm feeling sad, they're going to look at me some type of way. We forget all of that with my poetry. If you're feeling angry, we're going to write about it. If you're feeling sad, let's write a poem about it. So I try to normalize all of the human emotions, jealousy, things happen. We're human. We're supposed to feel these things. So that's really what I talk about. It's just being human and the experiences that come with it.
Um, yeah, I feel like that's a great message to wrap it up. Actually, being
Yeah,
being human.
being
Um,
human.
s- so, um, yeah, Anastasia, for the people that have listened listened to our talk and our very insightful discussion about poetry and just in creative in general, if they found it as interesting as I did, if they related to the things we talked about, where can we find you online? Where can we find your books, all the other stuff that you might have available online, and all the links I obviously kind of put in the description as well, so y'all can find it
Yeah.
easier. Um, but yeah, where can we find you?
I'm mainly on Instagram, so my handle is Anna Marie Poetry. That's ANAMARIE Poetry. And then my website, Summer Solace, SOLACE, healing.com.
Nice. Very
Yeah.
cool. So, um, yeah. Thank you so much, Anastasia. Thank you for your time today. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing your life and your journey with us. And yeah, just taking us into your poetry. It's very nice.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was a great time. Thank you so much.
Cool. I'm glad you enjoyed. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day and bye everyone.